Welcome is the most important thing to those of you already on board and to those of you still coming. I'm very pleased to have you this morning talking about what is an incredibly important topic. There are a few housekeeping things. Will be recorded, would definitely be available afterwards for dissemination by ourselves and yourselves. Please help us with that. The question function and the comments function are both available to participants this morning. Please make use of that, ask questions. Please try and adhere to just questions, not so many welcomes and comments, but just questions. And we will try and get as many of those answered either during the webinar itself, as well as afterwards. If we have a little bit of time left, we have some exciting speakers. These speakers will be, in many cases, switching off their video while one of them is talking so that you can focus on what's really important. We have some interesting presentations which will also be available to you afterwards. And that is about the 45 seconds of housekeeping that I wanted to squeeze in here. I would like to say, however, that this is a key topic. And it's a key topic because we have come full circle. When we started needing energy as people, everybody was on their own. And slowly but surely, as communities and as individuals, we lost control over our energy sources and lost the benefits in many cases also of those energy sources, up to the point where in the 60s, 70s and early 80s, large communities, local governments were selling off their utilities into the private sector and people were losing control, cities were losing control, communities were losing control. Renewable energy provides us with a unique opportunity to take some of that control back, to take some of those benefits back, to make things local and locally valuable again. And so your participation in this call is all the more important to us. And we have some really good people to talk about these topics for you. Our first speaker is Stefan Gsänger. He wears many hats, but perhaps most interestingly for us here, he's the Secretary General of the World Wind Energy Association. He is an ex-com member of the Global 100% Renewable Energy Association. He's Vice Chair and Bureau Member at REN21. He's highly active. I think he's even chair or co-chair at the Arena Community Energy Group within the Coalition for Action. A very busy gentleman. But one who is enormously active and very, very dedicated to the community energy space. And so, Stefan, if you would be willing to explain to us exactly what community energy is and why it's valuable, then I'd like to invite you to start.
Thank you so much, Rian. Let me say thank you to everyone, starting with that. It's a great pleasure as World Wind Energy Association, do that also in a formal way to say thank you for having this opportunity to present this topic to daring cities to the conference. Thanks a lot, Rian. You as coordinator of the Global 100% Renewable Energy Platform, of which we are a member as World Wind Energy Association, which is another very important topic, of course, how we can come to a globally 100% renewable energy supply. And that, I think, has to go hand in hand with a more decentralized structure of our energy supply. And that is what we often kind of see together with community energy. So let me briefly introduce the World Wind Energy Association. We are a non-profit and international umbrella association with more than 600 members in more than 100 countries. We are based in Bonn, not far from the UN campus, not far from the UN Climate Change Secretariat, and not so far also from the head office of ICLE, that is something around less than a kilometer from here. Wind power, of course, is a wind association. I need to refer to that just to show you this amazing success story. We started, of course, wind power utilization started thousands of years ago. Windmills started 1,000 years probably ago. Modern wind electricity generation, the first tries end of the 19th century, but really starting in the 1980s. And a lot happened at that time in Denmark based on community initiatives. So we have an amazing success story here with, at this point of time, something like 700,000 megawatt, contributing around 6% of the global energy demand of today. Now, what we want to, of course, refer to now is community energy and why it is so important to include the citizens and give them an active role in this move towards renewable energy. And what we need in this is not just that citizens accept it, that they say, okay, yeah, that's fine, but that they become drivers because they understand the benefits, not only for climate change mitigation, but to become drivers and create the positive momentum that we need, that they not only accept, but that they start by themselves new initiatives. That is in particular the case for wind farms. So we have been working on that topic of community energy now for more than 10 years, and also try to set up a definition of what is community energy. And this is something I would like you to keep in mind. 3 criteria we've come to: the majority of the shares of a project must be held by the local community, by local individuals. The voting control must rest with the community. And thirdly, the benefits, which means the profits, but also what goes beyond profit, must be shared and distributed locally. So 2 out of these 3, then we call it community energy. Local control, local benefits, local ownership. That's what we mean. And of course, when we talk about renewable energy for rural electrification, then that becomes even more obvious, because when we think about productive use of energy, which is often used as an argument why and how rural electrification in the poorest parts of our planet can work and help bring people out of poverty, because then they can do more economic activities, then it is clear that if the profit stays in a community because the community is owning a mini grid, a microgrid, then of course they can reinvest more, and that momentum can kind of be multiplied. So community energy is not a new or not a rare initiative or something that doesn't happen or only happens in few places. Its mainstream model in Denmark and Germany. Germany, more than half of the renewable energy installations are owned by community organizations. Can also be found in many other countries. We will soon hear about from Australia as well. We've trying to put this, and this is a bit challenging, of course, because large corporations, they're used to work on the global level. They have their units, departments, directors who are just working for what they call public affairs. But of course, it's very important that this kind of mainstream investment group is also visible on the global level. So I'm very happy that we've managed to have a community energy group, working group at IRENA, which I'm personally chairing together with a colleague from Japan. And on that level, we have managed now that this topic is now also discussed and more also recognized as something important, so that those governments who have not yet thought about the benefits and how that can be done are also becoming aware of that. So without going too much into detail, of course, one thing is crucial for community energy. We need the right frameworks that allow community energy to invest. In many countries, it's not a problem whether to raise the financial resources, because people in countries like Germany, in I suppose Australia, Japan, US, people have money, they could invest, but the frameworks must be in place. And that recent trend towards auctions is certainly something that is not at all good for community energy, for small investors in general, but open, non-discriminatory frameworks like feed-in tariffs are very important. And in the case of off-grid systems, of course, we need something more like soft loans, etc. Very important, of course, to mention here as well is that when we talk about now the corona crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic situation, many governments are now focusing on national domestic resilience. And now many organizations are pushing for renewables playing a key role in such economic recovery programs. It has to be said, of course, then that is just logic, that community energy, that local investment can and has to play a key role in all this, because it strengthens national, local, domestic resilience and helps to make countries less vulnerable and more resilient. And of course, the great opportunity we have now is support not only renewable energy, community energy, but start thinking about how can we create those 100% renewable energy communities, which we need in the future. Another topic I wanted to mention here is we've just started a new project as a World Wind Energy Association, analyzing the role of women in community energy, which is very important, we see, because there are some indications that women are, of course, dominating the new climate movement. Everybody knows Greta, and although she's very young, the incredible role that she's playing, but it's also in many countries that the climate change movement leaders are female. We've noticed that that seems not so much the case in renewable energy, and we want to find out what is actually the situation and how that can be changed. So we will collect data mainly now starting in Japan and in Germany, and then in the coming years or in the coming year, identify also ways how we can come to even broader mobilization of the society. Well, with this, I think I'm in my 8 minutes. Thank you, and back to Rian.
Thank you, Stefan. Perfect, actually. Well timed, sir. Well timed indeed. If you have any questions, folks, please make use of the comments or the questions feature, and do send them to Stefan. I would like us to do a quick poll, if that's okay with everybody. We've set up a poll, poll 1, which has to do with whether you personally have had any experience with community energy in your particular city, town, or community. It's running at the moment under polling. I'm going to ask the panelists, obviously, to vote as well, so that we have more positive votes, but we will deduct those when we do. But it'll be good to see just from the side of the audience who has been involved and for whom the topic is new. That's always quite interesting. Things are happening. Yes, some is winning. A lot is second, and the no is lost. So we have a lot of people in the house who are, or outside of the house in a sense, who have had some experience with the topic. That's good. That will mean that the questions, I think, are going to be more difficult for the poor panelists that we have with us today. Thank you for the introduction, Stefan. I, of course, forgot, but then my role is fairly menial. Rian van Staden, the platform coordinator for the 100% renewable energy platform, the bit I forgot at the beginning. So I think we can close the poll. I think we've got everybody. Final results, 50% some, 34% a lot, and 70% no. And there will be more polls, and there will be a test at the end, so beware. I would like to introduce our next speaker. Let me just close the polling. There we go, that's done. So our next speaker, and she's already visible, thank you, Taryn, all the way from Australia. Taryn Lane manages Australia's first community-owned cooperative wind farm, the Hepburn Wind Farm at Leonards Hill, which is just south of Daylesford, which is somewhere in the middle of Victoria, if I understand correctly. I spent some time elsewhere, but not so much the middle of Victoria, to be brutally honest. And she leads Hepburn ZNET, which is a community zero net emissions program. She's a Churchill Fellow, founding director of the Australian Wind Alliance and the Coalition for Community Energy, and a consultant who works as researcher, policy developer, and advisor. Taryn, community energy in Australia, what's happening?
Great, thank you. Is my PowerPoint, has that come up okay for you?
Yeah, it looks good.
Great, excellent. So hi everyone, thank you so much for having me be part of this discussion. And this is a picture that was taken at our last National Community Energy Congress, and I hope you can also see the huge amount of women in the audience. We would also say that in Australia, there is a majority of community energy projects being led by women. My wind farm is run by 3 part-time women. So I'm the manager, and there's 3 of us, we're all women. And that's quite a common theme within Australia. So this was taken obviously back when we were all allowed to gather pre-pandemic. I hope that we can do it again sometime soon. So the community energy sector in Australia began with my project 10 years ago, my communities project, and now we have over 105 groups in Australia and 70 operating projects. And as you can see from this map, this is a map of the little orange tags, all of the active community energy groups in Australia. So they're really, quite widely dispersed, but there's definitely a hub in Victoria and New South Wales. And we also have in the green little boxes what the state-based targets are. So we do have a 100% target for renewable energy by 2030 in South Australia. We have a 50% target in Victoria, and the line underneath is what the emission reduction targets are. So all of the states have agreed to a 2050 zero net emissions target, but we have no interim targets in most states yet. So this is my community's project, and there's about 200 people in that human sign, which is just below our turbine, and they're making out the sign to stay below 1.5 degrees. So this was really a call to our state government to set significant emission reduction targets so that we can have a safe climate. And, you know, just picking up on what Stefan was saying about the role of community energy in making communities more resilient, you know, I think in Australia, we've always talked about the community cohesion that can come with community energy, as well as, you know, the movement building aspects, so the social aspects and the economic benefits, which are very clear. But now we're having a new conversation in Australia, which is really about the bushfire resilience that we can have from having decentralized energy systems. For us, you know, that really needs to look like hybrid technologies and battery storage, decentralized in order that if there is, you know, bushfires coming through our areas, or if there's, you know, bushfires nearby which take down the grid, that our communities can still be self-supplied. So that's a very, very big conversation that's happening in Australia at the moment, is the role of community energy in fire resilience. So our wind farm has been operating for 9 years, and we're a cooperative of 2013 members. We built 4.1 megawatts of wind, and next year we will be building 7.44 megawatts of solar. And then we have a planning permit for 10 megawatt hours of battery storage as well. So we will build the battery storage when it's affordable to do so. We also do a lot of work in our community around emission reduction. So we have the Hepburn ZNet project, which is our zero net emissions mandate by 2030. So for us, that's really about doing our bit to stay within the 1.5 degrees of a safe climate. And as you can see from this chart, it represents what our local community versus our visitors, because we are a high tourism area, what our footprint is across different sectors, and what over to the right, what some of the solutions are. So we have a number of programs and projects that we're rolling out in our community in order to you know, mitigate these emissions. These are some of the programs that we're doing, and I'm sure they're quite common over in Germany as well. So we have, you know, bulk buys for solar and battery PV to go on rooftops. We do free energy audits and retrofit houses. So we have grants for retrofitting houses. We are doing an electric vehicle bulk buy. We're installing electric vehicle charging stations. And that's the energy piece, but we are also simultaneously doing a very big focus on agriculture, because we live in a regional area, and our agriculture footprint is around about 44% of our total emissions footprint. So it is a very key focus of us in the coming years, and we're lucky that we live in an area where there is a lot of innovation in regards to agriculture. So in regards to the community energy sector in Australia, and as I mentioned earlier, there is, you know, 70 projects that have been built. The common models that we're seeing are bulk buys. So, you know, this can be solar or battery storage. We're also seeing heat pumps, so solar hot water heat pumps. And then the next common model is donation. So this is where, you know, a community group or, you know, or similar receives a donation for solar and battery for their rooftop. And generally these projects are under 30 kilowatts. Then we're seeing small scale ownership or investment models, and this is the most common model. So around about 55 of the projects that have been built are all this small scale ownership investment model, and they're under 100 kilowatts, and they're essentially rooftop solar. And most of the solar is consumed behind the meter, and so the investors can get a significant return on their investment. And then the next model, which is, you know, the Hepburn wind scale model, is the mid-scale ownership model, and they are generally 1 to 10 megawatts, and there's around about 8 in development in my state of Victoria at the moment, and around about the same in New South Wales, and frequently these are being coupled with battery storage. And then we're also seeing community energy retailing models. So we have 2 community energy retailers currently in Australia. One is a community-owned retailer, so it's a cooperative and it's community-owned. The other model is essentially a retailer for hire. So they do the back end, and then the communities can do the front end, and it's called white labeling, where they essentially have a retailer service that sits behind them. We're also seeing, I guess, on the other end of the scale, co-investment, which we would put under the breadth of what community energy is in Australia. So the first project that was done last year was for the Sapphire wind farm. It's a 275 megawatt project, so a very large wind farm, and a portion of the wind farm was available for community investment. So $1.8 million was raised from the community, and they receive a 6% return quarterly on their investment for a 10-year period. And next will be a 50 megawatt hour battery, which will be located in our capital city of Canberra, and that will also have the community investment. Some of the things that we are lobbying for in Australia, and I'm sure many of these, either Germany's had them historically or you're also wanting them. So we're seeking, alongside having renewable energy targets, we want community energy targets on a state-by-state basis. And to deliver those targets, we would like to see feed-in tariffs. So very common to what you've had historically. We're also, we have seen trials of community power hubs, which are regionally based hubs that stimulate community energy, but we would like to see more of those rolled out around the country, as well as, you know, support for net zero community planning, instead of just pilots, like what Hepburn Shire has been, was a pilot program. We want to see that rolled out more broadly, and ensuring that solar is inclusive and available for everyone. So this is around programs that provide incentives for renters and low-income users to access solar. Thank you.
Thank you, Taryn. Well timed as well. Thank you for staying pretty much on plan. Very interesting, and that already has generated a few questions for me. I'm hoping that perhaps our participants would like to also ask 1 or 2 questions. Please feel free to pop them in the chat or in the question and answer function. That would be fine. We have another poll. It's always interesting. This one is poll 2. You need to probably use the down arrow to get to it, and I'm going to ask Julia to restart it for us. What are the main barriers for community energy from your perspective? Is it policy? Is it lack of knowledge of renewables? Is it lack of knowledge of community energy? Financing? Something else perhaps? Please take a moment and fill in that poll for us, and then let's have a look at and see whether we can get some sort of a consensus, or at least a feeling of your thoughts in terms of what is currently blocking the distribution of community energy, or the realization of community energy. And I think, not perhaps surprisingly, policy is ahead, in the sense that policy is behind the times, perhaps. But there is obviously a lack of knowledge and financial resources as well. A few other things. Awareness of renewable energy, not so much, which is a good sign, because of course that should be ubiquitous in this day and age. Good, I'll give you another couple of seconds. And Julia, close the polling. Thank you. So yeah, the winner by quite a bit is policy. And I think we probably all deep down kind of agree. So that's really good. Thanks for that, Julia. And thanks for everybody who polled. The next speaker is Thomas Zwingmann. And this is another excellent example, I think, of a real community level initiative. Thomas is the founding member and one of the 2 chairmen of the Bürgerenergie Rhein-Sieg, which is an energy cooperative here in Germany, in the city of Siegburg, just outside of Bonn, between here and Cologne. And besides his voluntary work for Bürger Energie, he works as an energy advisor for residential clients, if I understand correctly. So Thomas, please.
Okay. Yes, thanks Ryan for the introduction, and thanks to Stefan for the invitation to take part at this session. Yeah, my name is Thomas Zwingmann. I'm one of the chairman of Bürger Energie Rhein-Sieg. It's a local community energy project, rather a little bit smaller than that we've just heard from Tyron. But yes, we are a German energy cooperative established by an initiative of the Municipal Council of Siegburg. Siegburg is a small town, about 40,000 inhabitants near Bonn. And we have been founded in January 2011 by 10 people out of Siegburg. Among us, there were an employee of the municipal administration. There have been politicians of the municipal council, and some citizens out of Siegburg. So it's a cross-section of the local society. And the goal why the city of Siegburg initiated this foundation was to realize renewable energy projects in the region, in the Rhein-Sieg region, and to give citizens the possibility to participate on renewable energy projects. So let's have a look into our membership. Most of the members are citizens, and there are also some companies, some banks, some foundations, and municipalities. The municipalities of the Rhein-Sieg-Kreis are mostly members. And over that, there are also some NGOs, public institutions, parties, and church groups. So you see, it's a colorful variety of members. And interesting fact is that the cause, because they joined us, are mostly to realize energy projects in the region, and they are not looking for very high return of invests. That's a very the most is really to realize those renewable energy projects in the region. So what are we doing? Our business areas, the main actual topics are photovoltaics. We are also part of a wind project, and our last project is our car sharing, e-car sharing. Later on, I will talk about that a little bit deeper. And another one is the electricity sale. Together with other energy cooperatives, we are selling our green energy coming out of our plants. Some future topics may be smart grid, local heating, and combined heat and power plants. But there are also, only some basic topics, not in the main focus today. So I would introduce in some words our very interesting photovoltaic project built on old age residence building in Siegburg. The plant has been built by Bürgerenergie, and we leased it to the user of the building. So the power used within this building counts as private consumption. In Germany, there's a very difficult construction, the renewable energy law, and if one uses the energy in produced on his own building in the house, it's called as private consumption, and there are some financial advantages. So we must construct these legal construction as we've done. So the advantage is the user of the power has to pay lower EEG reallocation charge, and so that means they have a lower power price. So it's an interesting construction to lease the plant to the user of the building. So another project, very easy one, a hall, a new built hall in the city of Bonn. And just after this hall has been built, the city of Bonn asked us to install a PV power plant on the roof. And so it was all prepared for the installation, and so it was, for us, it was very easy to build plant on this building. And our latest project is to install an car sharing system. But not as most of the other car sharing companies. We don't want to establish such stations in the middle of big cities, but at residential quarters in rural and surroundings of cities. To bring the possibility to use car sharing to people that are not living in the downtown areas. The requirement that we establish such a car sharing station is that there is a group of people who have serious and real need to use a car. For example, they have no own car, and sometimes they want to use a car, or they have the need to use a second car, and so these group must exist, and then we can establish our system in that quarter. We are only working with electronic driven cars, and the basic requirement is on the base of our system is that we use green power to feed the cars with electricity. So that's in short words from me. Thank you for your attention, and yeah, have a nice day and interesting discussion afterwards.
Thank you very much, Thomas. That's very interesting. I live in the same administrative area, and I was unaware of this, which just goes to show that something that Stefan said earlier before we started is quite true, that suddenly with the whole Corona business, local becomes far more interesting because we feel that we can actually make perhaps more of a difference than would be the case otherwise. Before we start discussing things, we have one more poll, which is poll number 3. If you click down, it's what are the main benefits of community energy? You've seen 2 excellent examples and had one overview. What do you see as being the main benefits of community energy? It's a multiple choice. So Julia, would you be able to start the, yep, thank you very much, you have, indeed. So if you could page down to the 3rd poll and give us some of your feedback, that would be very good. I really enjoyed all 3 presentations. My mind is boggled, Taryn, by the things you've managed to put together. Extraordinary. It's just, I think it's a really, really cool example. And Thomas, I will certainly be trying to be more involved in the region as well, because I think it's a classic example. I do have a question, and as soon as the poll is finished, I'm going to open the questions by asking a question, which I think is always a sensible way of doing it. Let's have a look. We have a couple of seconds left on the poll. If you have an opinion, your time is up. Thanks, Julia. So, the added economic value in the community came out tops. Not so much the tax income for the municipality, not so much jobs or even access to energy, but certainly, of course, also the environmental benefit and the action for the climate, which makes a great deal of sense as well, which is why we do so many of these things. So interesting outcome there, and makes a lot of sense, I think. If I may open, we have a couple of minutes left, if I see correctly, and I think we can ask 1 or 2 questions, or we have a few last minute, 1-minute closing comments from our panelists. But I did want to ask, Taryn, a model that we don't see here very often is the bulk buying thing. Or at least I haven't run into too many examples in the European context. Bulk buying electric vehicles, how did that go? How did you manage that? What was the impact? Were you able to bargain down the prices?
Yeah, so I guess within the Australian context, you know, particularly when you think about solar and batteries and heat pumps and EVs, it's you know, it's a competitive market, and there's a lot of in particular, you know, quite aggressive marketing from the residential solar sector. And so people don't feel like they can trust the process and that they can trust the suppliers. They are concerned about getting a good deal. So by doing a bulk buy process, essentially what we do is we team up with our local government, our council, our municipality, and we you know, ask for tenders. So we ask for you know, commercial suppliers to bid in, and then we assess those tenders, and then we essentially give one the stamp of approval for a fixed period of times, and it's at an agreed price. So therefore the community knows that there has been some due diligence done on a supplier, and that everybody will be getting the same price and the same deal. And so we have a lot of success with that model, because it does just you know, provide a trustworthy process for people. In regards to the electric vehicle bulk buy, we will be, so that's launching on November 5th. So it'll be the first time it's done in Australia, and we are going to give it you know, a good try. But we have had 200 expressions of interest. And the model that we are using is bringing secondhand fleet cars from Japan. So they're not brand new cars. They're sort of, you know, 3 years old. Therefore, they are a lot cheaper, because one of the biggest barriers in our community is affordability for electric vehicles. Everyone wants one, but not many people can afford them. So for us, it was about trying to make them cheaper.
I like the idea. It's not something that I think would occur immediately to an audience here, but I think it's also definitely something to look at. The leveraging of community buying power is certainly something, and I can imagine that with things like PV and so on, it makes an awful lot of sense. I'm just quickly checking if let's see if I have any questions. Yes, there are some. We have time for just 1 or 2 more before we have closing statements from everybody. Do you see the potential? How do you see the potential for community energy in developing countries with lots of informal settlements? Is this an option to create jobs and energy security? Stefan, what's your feeling on that?
Yeah, well, we have, of course, many members in developing countries as well. And of course, the answers that we got on the poll are typically from industrialized countries. Of course, those people who are obviously joining us now, I suppose most of us, we are industrialized countries, and then energy access is not an issue. But when we talk about many African countries, for example, then the situation is very different. And then it's very obvious that most of the villages like we had 2 years ago, our second World Community Power Conference in Mali, in Bamako, 90% of the population has no access to electricity at this point of time. And of course, that's why I also presented this one slide about the productive use of energy and what the difference is that ownership makes. Of course, community energy even is more important in such a context. And because, again, we do not need to wait necessarily for international investors, which have in such a context, of course, much higher even expectation of the return they expect on such an investment because of the perceived risk. Just to give you an example, when you get a loan in Germany, it must be similar, Japan, wherever, you can get it now for 1-2%, but when you get a loan for a mini grid in Mali, you pay 20%. And you get that money only maybe for 2 years. So that shows us that we must somehow have more local ownership, find the right frameworks for that in the developing world. And of course, people are more than happy there, but they do not necessarily have the tools. And the main barrier is, of course, this how to capitalize on. It's not that they do not have any assets, but we do not have the frameworks in place that allows them to become shareholders. And that is certainly a crucial point. How we change the frameworks, unfortunately on the global level, everything is benefiting the large international investors, but how we can put communities in the center, and these people, they know how to work, they have a mind. This is what you can capitalize on. They often own the land. That translated into equity, you could do a lot more, and that's one of our, I would say, battlegrounds, and I'm very happy, that's my last comment on this now. We're working with IRENA at the moment on a white paper on enabling investment with a focus also on developing countries, and I hope that that paper will be published in the coming weeks and also has some impact on finance institutions, governments.
Thanks, Stefan. I am going to chop the final comments from the panelists for one question to Thomas, if I may, even though we are slightly over the time, and I'm aware of that, Julia, and pushing, don't worry. So short answer, Thomas, if you don't mind. The old age home project, the PV project, benefits quite a lot, I think, from the fact that you're able to classify the use of the energy in the building as own use. For everybody, so you have a lot of people using energy off the system, and the policy definitely benefits that. Do you see the way policy is structured surrounding PV systems on roofs in small to medium-sized installations in Germany these days as an opportunity or as a barrier?
On our point of view, it's a more a barrier than an opportunity, because someone who uses his own power has to pay for this power he uses from his own plant, and I think it's a barrier to do that.
Yeah, I quite agree, and it is I think in line with the poll that we had, that the
Yes.
policy quite often is just a real pain. Well, folks, thank you very much for the panelists, and thank you for the participants. As I said, the recording will be available, and we ask all of you to disseminate it as widely as you possibly can. Thanks to the World Wind Energy Association for hosting this, for the panelists, Stefan, Darren, Thomas. and for everybody who attended. And we're only 2 minutes over, which is pretty good going in this day and age, I think. So thank you, everybody, and have a good day.